Good before we can work in we put the audio and pause me so they don't hear you. Okay.
Okay, everybody can join me. We're streaming live. Very excited, very excited. Welcome to RenéMarie Stroke of Luck. I'm RenéMarie, and what an incredible show this is going to be. I didn't share this publicly, but this is my stroke month. April 8th, I had a stroke at the age of 26. And it really is a wonderful time of year for me. That's why this show is called Stroke of Luck, because it was a stroke of luck for me to have a stroke. Because I really did understand the value of life and the purpose that we all have. And we got an incredible panel here today. And when we asked Michael to come back and be our guest, Ginny was scheduling some people on the show and they couldn't come. And we reached out to Michael and we said, Michael, is there anybody that you would like to invite to be on the show? And he actually, I'm going to let him share this, but he actually was working on a stroke and mental health issue seminar or program, and he really wanted to bring that to the forefront of the news. And I believe anything, this is all important stuff. And when I think back on my stroke, I really do remember having cognitive problems and suffering from aphasia, but not only suffering from aphasia where I couldn't speak, but suffering from aphasia where I couldn't think and I couldn't process. And I'm really blessed to be in a place where I could talk. So I want to thank Michael for bringing that to our attention. And actually, we have two of his members that are part of his board, believe. And Kimberly is on his board. Thank you for joining us today, Kimberly. And Jenny is a grantor, and she is a part of his world as well. And Jenny suffered a stroke. Kimberly, you are, what's your business?
Elevate Speech Services.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. That ties right into the program. So Michael, thank you for coming back. We love you. We are so grateful to you. You are such how did we meet, Michael? I don't even remember. I forget.
Gosh, it's been several years. You know what? I think it was through Stroke Awareness Oregon.
Oh, that's right.
I think Monet introduced us, if
Yes.
I'm not mistaken. So
yes,
it's been a few years.
Yes, yeah, it has been. And you've been a co-host on our guest and a co-host on our show for many, many years. And one of the things that I'm extremely grateful for you is for you sending the templates for your applications to help, and we're really, that's, my vision for the future for our foundation is to really get that program going. I have it up on my website, but it's not in full force yet because we don't have the funds to do it. But you got to just believe, and I started it. So I'm
Mhm.
very grateful to you, Michael, for being
Yes.
who you are. Why don't you share a little bit about Jenny and Kimberly from your aspect?
Well, how this all came about, it's long story short, Believe hosted a May luncheon to celebrate Stroke Awareness Month. And, in all honesty, Believe it's got where it doesn't host too many events, but a young lady, she was 22. Um, she was a part of Brain Injury Association of North Carolina. She kept pushing me to do the event, and finally I caved and said, I'll do it. And, you know, I never believe in coincidences.
Me neither.
And I met there for the first time, a husband and his wife. They were both. The husband had aphasia, um, and his wife was very concerned about him. And it's the first time I met him, and she asked me if I would get involved with him and invite him to luncheons and so forth. And I did do that, and he seemed fine from a layman's standpoint. Um, that was in June, and then in August, late August, he took his life.
Oh my God.
And it really upset me. I didn't have the ability to recognize that he had the problems that he had. But his wife, whose name is Pamela Hung, she called me a few months later and asked me if there was anything that she could do to honor
Her husband.
husband, Miguel. And
Wow.
she was telling me about all the difficulties she encountered and receiving mental health therapy from the different institutes. And she was real discouraged about that. And she was real discouraged. She felt that her husband never received proper treatment. And so I got the necessary expertise, Kimberly and Jenny. And we also, part of the group, we had a few other people involved, but we all did research on the uh, mental health situation in North Carolina. And we all got together after we were finished and realized that we had a very good research. And
Wow.
he ended up speaking to the North Carolina Stroke Advisory Council.
Wow.
And we spoke for an hour. And as the president of the council told, he was the president of the First Baptist Hospital in Wake Forest here. He said it was the most powerful presentation ever presented to them in his 2006 tenure. So it was really a powerful presentation, and Kimberly and Jenny were a vital part of that. And I'll let them, they've got an expertise that I don't have. Um, I have Believe. We've provided 178 grants so far from Believe. And I checked with each of the grantees. And the only thing that I really noticed, they talk about how many stroke survivors deal with mental health issues. And I was surprised. I just took, it's not scientific, but from the group, I took a survey, and it turned out that 54% of the individuals that we had provided grants to had considered suicide at one time.
Wow.
And I was real surprised at that. So, um, you know, I think maybe Jenny or Kimberly will talk about it, but a lot of the stroke survivors that get together for different support groups, they talk about we're all in this 50, 60, 70 age group, and they talk about that we just felt that we had to deal with it. We didn't need help. We weren't given help. We just felt we had to deal with it. And Kim and Jenny can talk about it a lot better than I can.
That's powerful, Michael. It's powerful that you are the channel for all this information that's going out. You know, you see something that is bothering you, it comes to your attention, it's bothering you, which that would have affected me as well. And you did something about it. Oh my gosh, that's so incredible. You know, I have so many questions running through my brain. Kimberly, you know what, can we just take 1 second? I want them to introduce themselves a little bit so that our audience could get to know them a little bit more. Jenny, I knew you suffered a stroke. Why don't you go first and just tell us briefly, and then we'll get into the conversation about that presentation that you guys made, because I really want to make sure that people see it a little bit. And do you guys have it posted anywhere? Like, do you that we could share with people to go to if they should need it? Because that's some powerful stuff. So go ahead, Jenny.
Thank you. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I got my PhD here in Durham at Duke University. My first career was actually as a CNA working with stroke patients. So that's
Wow.
kind of ironic.
Yep.
My very first patient that I ever worked with in the hospital system had multiple strokes. And so I've been in the healthcare system for like 30 years now. And then I went and got my undergraduate and graduate school PhD, was working full time as a therapist. And then all of a sudden in 2021, in the middle of the night, I didn't have any risk factors. I didn't drink or smoke or any of that stuff. I had no risk factors. I had a vertebral artery dissection. And in the middle of the night, I had a stroke.
What was the cause of it? Could you just share that a little bit more in detail?
A vertebral artery dissection. So my vertebral artery had been kind of sliced open by
Oh,
my vertebrae. And
oh,
typically that can happen as a result of like a car accident or even sneezing the wrong way. They really aren't sure what happens to cause them 100% of the time. But with
wow.
scans, so it took me a long time to get help because I was like, I'm too young, I have no risk factors, I didn't know I was having a stroke.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think it took about 8 hours for me to finally break down and call the hospital, which was too late to do much. But when I got to the hospital, the scans showed that I had this like major area of a blood clot that had kind of shattered and gone to 7 different parts of my brain. So my stroke was very complicated, but I've made a lot of recovery, and I can say that I wouldn't be where I am today without Michael and Kim at the Believe Foundation because they've helped me so much. But that's like the overview of my story.
Oh, that's incredible. You know, the fact that you were caring for stroke patients, helping them, and all of a sudden you suffer one, you could really understand the back end, you know, of how it feels, especially with this mental crisis, you know, that's incredible. Kimberly, let give our audience a little bit about your story as well.
Sure. My name's Kim Barate, and I am a speech therapist for adults. A lot of 95% of speech therapists focus on either kids or kind of the outpatient where they do a little bit of both. I've only specialized in adult neurogenic care my entire career. So I've been a speech therapist for over 20 years now, and 7 years in, I was actually diagnosed with a benign brain tumor
Oh, wow.
and had surgery, had to go for speech and PT and OT and vestibular. So been through the rehab process myself and can really understand where people are coming from, my clients.
Right.
So
It's
that's kind of,
important. I mean, I can't tell you that how many seminars and people I've met, and that are doctors and therapists, and they give a presentation without trying to understand how it feels. That's one of my biggest things is, when we talk about it, is, how it feels to suffer a stroke. And this mental health issue, situation or topic is really important because that's the unseen part of it. People don't know how it feels. They're doctors and they do a wonderful thing, but I think that the health industry, and you both could share a little bit more on this, is really navigating towards inclusive the families into the conversations about recovery or someone in the hospital. I remember my father was in the hospital. Every morning they had a discussion, a group topic about his situation, his care, and they included the family in that so that we could give our perspective into it because we know them better than they did. So I think that's really important, to that missing piece that people in the medical field are getting more inclined to include us in that. That's not like this is the way, that's it. It's really very important. So thank you, Kimberly, for sharing that. That's really, really important. So share with us, one of the topics that you had on that presentation. Like, it was so powerful. I mean, I would love to see it, but share with us like one of the topics on there that you guys brought to the forefront of that presentation.
I mean, if I can jump in, I think,
Yeah.
both Jenny and I had, mental health changes after our incidents and worked through it in our own ways. And one of the topics that we brought up in this presentation to the Stroke Advisory Council was, what we can do better as a medical community and a society to kind of bring understanding of mental health, recognition, the importance of a timeline on how to treat it appropriately. Because again, a lot of people don't know the risk factors or the signs and symptoms, and things go underdiagnosed. So then people don't know that they need help. And then when they do know and they go for care, is their care available?
Right, because it's after the situation. Like, I know that me being a stroke patient at the age of 26, and now I'm 63, I still could use some physical therapy, on my right side, because atrophy is a part of my world, so, and I believe what you're saying, Kimberly, is that, under the insurance, right? Is that what you're talking about? Or under the, to get covered, to get money to finance it? Is that what you're talking about, Kimberly? Is that, if they go later on, after like 6 months later or 2 years later, it's not considered a part of the stroke, or not considered a part of that illness that they had. Is that what you're referring to?
I think, that's definitely like access through insurance is
Yeah.
definitely a part of the conversation. Some people who don't have insurance that covers those, those services, or sometimes their co-payments are so extreme that it's not financially affordable for them to go to, get that help. But I think even before that step, right, just recognizing, do I have some kind of mental health issue that's come up? Mine was anxiety.
Mhm.
some people have depression. Those neurochemical changes that happen in the brain cause these things, and it's just kind of par for the course. Well, I don't feel like myself, but I can't pinpoint
Right.
exactly what it is to say
Right.
I need psychology services,
Right.
or I might need some medicine to kind of help me through this,
Right.
because it's a whirlwind. I mean, I think we've all gone through that where we're not our best selves, right? In that moment, we have impairments, we're not making proper decisions or communicating well, being able to explain what we think we need. We're just surviving day to day,
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
through it.
I remember, and I'll let you chime in a little bit, Jenny and Michael. I remember when I first suffered my stroke, back, my early 30s, I guess. I was your brain gets scrambled when you have a stroke, and it really needs to defragment itself. You really need help in defragmenting your brain, and how people, and I know that my speech therapist, my doctors, my physical therapist, they were going through the procedures to do it, but nobody was touching on my brain, you know. And it wasn't until my sister, who knew me, right? The family that plays a big part in your recovery, because they know you best, they know you different than you were prior. That she said, you need help, with you need to talk to somebody. And I'm very closed off, that I don't show anybody what's going on. So I'm very, when I'm out there, I'm smiling and doing, and nobody's realizing that there's something going on inside, which is a big, 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 big thing that happens in life. And so I went to, she found a psychologist, that I went to. And the only reason I agreed to go to her was because, and this is in my world, that it was through a church. And when I went, I prayed. So that was the connection that got me into it. So there are different ways to get people to agree or to want help, because we don't understand that we need help, like Kimberly said, right? We don't understand that we need help because we're thinking we're fine, we're fine, so that was the connection. So I hope that people realize that, if you're a sports player, then go to a coach, that's a doctor. I'm just saying, like, trying to connect the dots to people so that they get the help that they need. So that's what I was thinking. Jenny, give us a little bit feed.
Jenny, if you don't mind, I like to preface some of
Yeah.
and get your expertise a little bit. But one of the problems here in North Carolina that the couple encountered, they would receive approval, but appointments would be 2 or 3 months out. And like you said, a baseball player, his expertise, a coach. The problem is all therapists aren't created equal, as
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And they kept it. And in dealing with the stroke requires a special expertise. It's a whole different set of can of worms. So that was a real problem. And once they finally got in to see a therapist after 3 months, well, that therapist wasn't equipped to handle an aphasia,
Yeah.
and it created real problems. I'm sorry, Jenny. I don't
No,
want you talking technical terms.
that's very important to bring that up, because we as family members have to be advocates for we've spoken about this, Michael, many times. You need to have an advocate for you, fighting for you. If you can't get into that doctor, we'll look for another one.
Yes.
So because within that 3-month period, anything could happen. And
Yeah.
it's very sad, very sad. Sorry, Jenny, go ahead.
No, it's totally okay. I'll try to tie some of this together because it all fits well with what I was going to say anyway. I think part of the reason, as a psychologist, part of the reason I've started sharing my story, both with my own patients, I had to process it with a few of them, with the medical community, because I've always liked teaching. I like cut my teeth in teaching hospitals and have been on multidisciplinary teams my entire career. Um, I think there has been a lack of resources. And so the topic of our original panel was Say Suicide. And it was really addressing suicide and mental health, bless you, in stroke recovery and in stroke survivors. And my career working with individuals and families has been to destigmatize suicide and mental health issues. And so I took what I already believed in and applied it to this and started talking about my own experiences with my own stroke to hopefully destigmatize. And one of the things that we talked about in that panel, which you can get access to,
Yes, love it.
is that every stroke is different and every reason for suicide is different.
Yep.
So we all have different challenges that are brought on by the stroke, depending on where it happened in the brain, depending on what kind of support you have. And so I think that when we think about what causes mental health stress and suicide, what adds to what's already happening in the brain are these stressors externally, like medical coverage and medical care. And so for me, my insurance cut out after 15 sessions of PT. I was still in a wheelchair and I had no insurance. And I racked up about 10 grand in debt before I met Michael and Kim and Believe. And then they kind of helped me figure out a better plan for rehab, better services, and they kind of helped me get back on my feet a little bit, which I think is very powerful because for someone who doesn't have that, the financial stressors of how am I going to actually do what I need to do because I still actually need to rehab. And
Right.
through this process, I've had to learn, like Kim mentioned, that you have to advocate for yourself. So my goal in this has been to tell my story, teach survivors how to advocate for themselves and how to ask for help, but also to teach medical providers how to really genuinely be curious about someone's well-being enough to ask them if their mental health is really okay in a way that they're trustworthy and in a
Mm,
way that's going to get an honest answer.
mm,
And then, like Michael referenced with the really sad case of Miguel, they did try to get, providers, but the providers have a long wait list, especially if you have managed care or you don't know how to advocate for things like single case agreements or to find someone out of network. Um, and I think that people don't want to talk about suicide. People don't want to talk about mental health. So the more we can destigmatize it and the more we can actually make it like a common conversation. One of the things I talked about in our group before was people ask me all the time if I fell, about my physical safety. Do you have any falls? Have you been dizzy? But no one asked me, like, have you thought about hurting yourself?
right, right,
How's
right.
your mood? How's your support? And I actually shared in that, and I'll share here. I got quite suicidal for a while, and I was in therapy and I was on medication, and I wouldn't have acted on it. But if I hadn't had those guardrails and that net under me, what would have happened? I don't know, right?
You know what, Jenny, you know what? Sometimes you could be thinking it, but you don't know how to share that with other people
Right.
because you don't have that, like, believe you said this, you don't have that trust or that connection, and you don't want to bother them. You don't want to scare them.
Right.
So it's so touchy. So, but how if someone sees someone or recognizes that someone's could be suicide, I mean, what I have another question before I ask that question. So what are some of the signs that people should look for for somebody that could be thinking about suicide? What are some of those signs that, and then my second question, which I was going to ask us, and what should they do about it?
Yeah.
What should people do about it? Those are really very important questions.
I think Kim and I will probably have different and complementary answers to the first one, so
Okay.
I'll answer the second one first.
Okay.
In my mind, if you think someone is suicidal, it's really okay to say, how have you been doing really? What's been good this week? What's been hard this week? What do you need? What would it be like to talk to a pastor or coach or a therapist? Do you want me to go with you?
Right.
How can I support you? I can tell that you're not doing well, and it's okay to not be okay. But I see this, I see you, and you don't have to put on a brave face all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the language that a loved one is more than likely to use.
Right.
A professional like a PT or an OT or a speech therapist or a doctor might use different language. And I think that's where the disconnect sometimes is, that people are afraid, the medical community is afraid to have that conversation. But it's about leaning in and being truly curious and kind of creating that safety. Like, it's okay to not be okay. Let's actually talk about what you need.
Mm.
And then, in terms of the signs, because I have worked more with the mental health community and clients who are suicidal, and Kim has worked more with stroke patients who will probably have stroke survivors, will probably have different answers. But for me, clients who are talking about suicide a lot to me, because we have that trust already, clients who say, I've been thinking about killing myself, or I've been thinking about ways I would do it, and I always do thorough assessments. I always check and see if they have any means, but they lose interest in things. They lose interest in people. They're more isolated. They seem more down. They may make some passive attempts. They may take a handful of pills and let someone find them, or kind of reach out for help in odd ways that don't make sense. So for me in my career, which has not been treating stroke survivors,
Right. Right.
it plays out differently than it might in a stroke survivor, which Kim would probably see differently.
Yeah, I think being a speech therapist, my job is communication and helping people get that back. We talked a little bit about aphasia, and, for those who don't know what aphasia is, that's that left brain language deficit where we know what we want to say. You have all the right thoughts, all the ideas, but expressing it is the trouble. There's equal and opposing difficulties with right brain stroke survivors as well, just in initiation, and the way that they might be perceiving what they're saying, and is that really being picked up? So I do a lot of counseling in the work that I do, because people feel comfortable communicating in my sessions.
Right.
And we do get to the nitty gritty of, hey, what is the purpose now? Like, what are we working towards, and what keeps you interested? What are some things that you can find motivating during the day to get you feeling back to yourself, even with the things that we're working in and towards? And so identifying in that, like a safe space, like Jenny said, family members will probably notice things more than a medical professional, but that doesn't mean that the medical professional shouldn't ask.
Right.
And maybe the family doesn't know. Maybe they just think, well, he's not initiating, they're not doing things that they used to do. That's just the stroke, when it in fact is the mental health piece. So I think it's really important to talk about, community-based education for these symptoms, lack of interest, low motivation, just changes in general. There's a mnemonic, and I don't know what it is right now, but maybe we can share that with your viewers later, for those signs and symptoms to look out for. But I think one of the things that we shared with our previous presentation was the time frame, right? The time frame, 6 months post to 2 years post is
Wow, that's
generally
important stuff.
when you're going to see these symptoms kind of come up the most, because in the first few months after an injury, whether it's a stroke or brain injury or anything else, you're just processing, right? You have hope. You're still gathering information. You're still figuring out what's gone on, and you're into therapies, and there's purpose and there's hope, and we're moving forward.
Right.
And then at some point that may plateau a little bit, or the insurance cuts out, and then you're supposed to be getting back to work and maybe you can't. And then all of it kind of hits. And that's when, the most support is kind of needed in that time frame. So we should be looking out for those symptoms during that period more than, very early on when we're in the hospital and people might give us a screener, or we might see a psychologist, and we don't even know which way is up yet. How do we know what we're feeling?
Yeah, I mean,
When
when
the
you,
dust settles and we get home, that's when those
yeah,
assessments should be given.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because what I was an ambassador for stroke patients at hospital, Valley Hospital. And actually I was on Sing for Hope because I'm also a singer. So I was on Sing for Hope in the city. They're an organization that goes into hospitals and sings to people just to lift their spirits. And when I went one time, and one of the patients that we were singing to suffered a stroke. So I asked the leader if I could share my story and bring them hope, and they said yes. So my point is that when you initially suffer a stroke, you need time to level off. Your brain has been combobulated and twisted around, and honestly, I talk about it like an onion. You have to peel back the layers, and get to the core, so that you could be balanced again, so that you could try to fix your life. But when I went into the hospital many times and spoke to stroke patients, I just wanted to bring them hope, because at that particular time, I don't think there was any 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 really communicating, like, let's get down to the nitty gritty. I think that you had to balance off, stabilize, and then begin the healing process. And I will tell you that one of my goals, and I'm not sure if I told you this, Michael, one of my visions for our foundation, and I always tell, or other organizations around the country, is, let's get together and let's build recovery centers for stroke and aphasia patients. And is one for aphasia in Maywood, New Jersey. But my vision is so that people don't have to pay. Doctors donate their services, and they, physical therapists donate, music therapy. That's all donated. It's all sponsored. So that people can continue on their recovery years after they suffer a stroke. And maybe they get better, they could come in and volunteer as well. And it just this big circle that of things to help people, to help one another, to start connecting. And maybe we could have just to talk, the way AA has a talk every week or every month. Just that place that makes you feel comfortable and trustworthy. I think it's so important. So that's my big vision for my foundation. And because my problem was, when Michael and I were talking, and he does a great job with the applications, but to me it's like, I want to give everybody, I want to help everybody. I don't want to, I mean, it breaks my heart. I can help this person, but I can't help that person. And I know it's a step in the right direction, but it's like, no. We gotta think of we have to try to find a way to help everybody, So I always think big, too big once in a while, So it's good. Michael, so I know I always love you because you're always like sitting back, giving everybody the platform. But what is your input into this discussion?
Jenny kind of made me rethink um, the situation. I was married. I was very fortunate that I had in-laws here.
Yep.
And I went to my in-laws for 7 months after my stroke
Wow.
because we lived in a townhouse and I had to go up 3 flights of stairs. And as Jenny put it, I was in a wheelchair and
Yeah.
it was going to be a real problem. Well, I never went back to that townhouse, but she encountered the same problems I did, only one big thing. She was single. She was what, 42, 43, 45 when you had the stroke. Uh, and hospitals all they think they're doing so much to help you that they don't think about the day that we become an outpatient
Yep.
and all that we endure. And I think that's where it starts. And I know we kind of touched on all areas of that, but it has really made me think about that. Um, and I know Jenny was in a second floor apartment as well, and she was single. And I don't think she had family that lived here. So I'm speaking for her, but I really it's interesting. I think that our discussion presentation here has opened some people's eyes to the fact that more stroke survivors need to be involved in new, even hospital processes
Hmm.
that involve strokes.
Hmm.
And they recognize that so many of the processes that they put in place, they make mistakes. They don't even check with a survivor on what some of the processes should be. But I'm not absolutely positive what will come out of the presentation we made, but I hope it's very positive. And I was selected to the North Carolina board of the Stroke Advisory Council.
Wow,
And
that's incredible.
I am the first stroke survivor ever placed on the board. And
That's
so
incredible.
I'm looking at that very positively.
A while ago, I don't know if you knew this, Michael, many years ago, I had submitted a letter to the President of the United States many years ago. And I said, our organization, and you know that I would take all the other organizations with me. I said, we want to be the stroke ambassadors. We want to be on the panel for stroke ambassadors. We want to be able to have our input into recovery and what goes on. And that's including insurance. That doesn't, that's not only talking health wise, that's talking about insurances and how it navigates and have our conversation. So that is incredible, Michael, that you started that and you got that from, was that due to this presentation that you guys?
Yes, yes.
Incredible, incredible. That's wonderful. We're so proud of you to you.
Yeah,
And they
I
have a,
was.
I was going to say they have a great logical businessman thinking about it. You're not going to go in and say like, we want to do this. No, you're going to think about the whole process and really think about the ins and the outs
Yes.
and weigh, and a businessman. So that's
Yeah.
incredible.
But I was kind of just the conduit. Those guys were the expertise, so I didn't deliver what they did. In fact, when Jenny spoke, there wasn't hardly a dry eye in the place. So there was lots of tears between Miguel Hung, his wife, speaking for a few minutes, and um, Jenny also being a stroke survivor. And while she endured, and as a clinical psychologist, her expertise before be before she was a stroke survivor and after being it. So.
Wow, that's incredible. So I want to ask Ginny, what did you do being a single parent, a single woman that suffered a stroke living on the second floor? And who did you reach out to? Who helped you?
That is a really great question. I got lucky there too. Lucky and not lucky. I had fortunately been saving up for a down payment on a house.
Hmm,
So that money's gone now, but I was able to, I had to move 3 times, but I was able to move to a first floor apartment. And then my brother put together a list of friends to come stay with me for a month at a time.
wow.
And so I had people stay with me, friends fly in and kind of just hang out at my apartment and stay with me for about 6 months. And they
Wow.
drove me to rehab twice a week and kind of helped me cook and do things I couldn't do for myself. So I feel very fortunate with that.
Yeah.
And then when I was able to finally walk again and be strong enough again, I'm now back on the third floor, which is great.
It's good exercise, right? You know, you're stable now and you're like, I'm gonna make those steps. You know, do you have an elevator in the building when you're tired?
Nope,
No?
nope.
That's good. That's good. It pushes us. We have, and that's really important. Like I've had programs where, you know, exercise and keeping your body moving and stuff like that is really a big part of recovery. It's a
Yeah.
big part of recovery. So, Kimberly, did you have any input into what we're talking about?
I mean, I think, if I can give one last message, what I
Yes.
see frequently in my clients, I also run a support group for people with aphasia, is that even if people know themselves that they are struggling with mental health issues, they don't act on it, or they're hesitant to. They want to tough it out. And I think it's a generational thing more than anything. I think our younger generations post COVID are a lot more open about mental health and needing to access professionals to get support from. But, you have a stroke or you have a brain injury and you're going to a million doctors and you're being carted around 5 times a week to different appointments, therapies, this, and that. They don't want to add one more thing, right? So my message would be invest in yourself for this healing because
Right.
it's necessary. And a big message that I send to people is that it's not a sign of weakness, right? This is a neurochemical imbalance that was caused by your injury,
Yeah.
complicated then by the emotional ramifications of your life change. You deserve to address this so that your quality of life gets better and you can feel back to yourself and get the care that you need. And, move things along faster than just trying to push through and endure and survive and hope that it passes. There's professionals out there for this. That's what they're for. And yes, finding one takes some time. So be patient. And if the first person doesn't do it for you, move on and find somebody who you connect with.
Yeah.
That would be my message.
And I want to add that, you know, when someone suffers from a stroke or whatever illness, you know, do your research, do your research, reach out to organizations, say, hey, this doctor's taking care of me. What do you think of him? Do you know any experts in the area? Like get your information. So and honestly, I mean, we always say that it's not too early to do your homework prior to having something happen to you. Learn, listen to this program so that if something does happen in the future, you can have the information. And you're not going to suffer a stroke by watching a program on strokes, you know, because people sometimes, you have to prepare in life the same way you need to prepare a will, you need to prepare, you know, your documents, you need to, you know, do taxes, you need to do finances, you know, you need to do all that stuff to prepare in life. So it's really important to reach out and to get your ducks in line so that you're ready for anything that comes in your life, you know. And the truth is, it may not happen to you, it may happen to somebody you love. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are about strokes, how many happen. Does anyone know how many strokes happen to each 100 people? Or, you know, I'm just saying, that's, you know, so my point is that it happens to so many people. It happens to so many people, and we really need to have our ducks in line when it happens and to know the signs of a stroke, which is be fast, right? Does anybody want to share what the be fast means?
Well, I forgot to tell you the truth what BFAS means.
I'll tell you.
I'm sure you know exactly what each of the acronyms are. You know something, RenéMarie, I kind of concentrate on before BFAST.
Mm,
Um, that is when the strokes occur. We need to stop that.
right.
I realize, and it is such a mammoth undertaking, and I don't know if they'll ever do it. But you look at all the reasons that a stroke occurs, and really, you know that 80% of all strokes are
Can be
due to
prevented.
high blood pressure. Um, Somehow we've got to get those people in to seek medical assistance. That they if they could seek medical assistance and receive medication, I think so many strokes could be prevented. And then we wouldn't have to worry about BFAST as much.
Yeah,
But
no, I get it.
BFAST is very important. I realize that's getting from the uh, where the stroke occurs to the hospital and
Yeah,
how quickly it is. You
yeah.
can tell us now what BFAST stands for.
I just,
I forgot what each of the
it's
letters stand for.
okay. So B is balance, right? If you see somebody who's off balance, E is your eyes, right? If you're having trouble seeing, or it's foggy, or you know, consistently. Fast is F is face. If your face droops on one side. Arm, A is arms. My arm does not go straight, but if you know, if somebody has trouble doing their arms. S is smile and speech. If you have a person that's slurring or they can't smile, that is a part of the stroke awareness. And T is for time. Time is of the essence. And my organization always adds in that if you see somebody who is suffering a stroke and you call the ambulance, please let them know that it could be a stroke. That's such an important part of the you know, to make people aware that it could be a stroke. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. But you're right, Michael. You know, there are a lot of steps that we could do prior to even having to worry about strokes. Because you're right, 80% of strokes are high. I don't know if they're from high. I don't know
High
that's
blood pressure.
on high blood pressure, but I know 80% of strokes can be prevented if you live
Yes.
a healthy lifestyle. That's, you know, from a doctor's. And the 20%, if it happens, then you need to go, you know, get emergency help. But
Yes.
so we only have a few more minutes, and I promise to give you the opportunity to share, you know, what's important to you. Give the elevator speech as to what you want people to take away from this program. And I hope you guys will come back when, you know, in a little bit, and maybe we could share the presentation with everybody so that, you know, we can make it globally. We can make it globally. So
Well, I'll give praise to both Kimberly and Jenny. Kim is our facilitator for our support group, and she is just awesome. There's no other way to put it. Everybody loves her. She gets, everybody will talk to her. She's absolutely awesome. And Jenny attended our class, I guess, about a month ago, and she talked about the pitfalls of a stroke and what you can do to encounter those.
Mm, wow, it's incredible, incredible. So I'm going to let Kimberly, give your what you want to share, and then I'll let Jenny.
I think I think I used my elevator speech a little earlier.
Yeah. But
You
you did
know,
say you wanted to share something. What was it? I forget what you said. You wanted to share what people should look for, I think it was. I forgot. We got so entrenched in our conversation.
we're
So
talking about the acronym for
yes.
depression. I'll look that up as Jenny goes.
Okay, great. Great. Hey,
Um,
we're live. We're doing this live, and I always Judy, one of my former board members, I used to always throw questions at her. She's like, Renee, you didn't prepare me for that. I'm like, but we're live. We're just gotta ask questions. If you can't answer now, we'll answer it this time.
Well, I found it if you want it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So it is SIGICAPS, and I might be saying it wrong. I'm not exactly sure how that is supposed to be pronounced. But S stands for sleep disturbances. These are all signs and symptoms to kind of look out for that could indicate a mental health issue. I is loss of interest. G is guilt. E is decreased energy. C is decreased concentration. A is appetite changes. P is psychomotor agitation, just kind of being irritable a little bit.
Wow.
And S is suicidal ideations.
Mm.
So you don't need all of those, right? Any one of those changes can indicate changes in mental health that need evaluation and possible treatment. So those are the things that you should look out for.
Yeah, and I will tell you that I don't like to take medicines, but and I want to reiterate that, we're not doctors. I'm not a doctor. And please check with your physician, do everything according to what your physician says. But sometimes I found you need to go on some medicine just to level yourself off until you could balance yourself and get yourself to that point. Because, sometimes we're off balance and we have to get our bodies to be balanced. Jenny, you could feed into that a little bit and then you could say your elevator speech.
I'll talk about medicine and then my elevator speech really quickly. I went off of one of my meds thinking the same thing. Um, I think it's personal for everyone. I didn't
Yes.
be on medication
Yep,
either.
me neither.
But what I found was it didn't work. I got much worse. So last August, I went off of my medication and I pretty much slipped into a very deep depression like I had never
Mm,
experienced because
mm,
my brain was different. And I didn't know it would be because they put me on that medication the instant I had the stroke in the hospital. So, or when I got to the hospital. So I didn't expect that. And so I have made the decision to go back on it because I feel better. Um, but my elevator speech would be to survivors of a stroke: acceptance, acceptance, acceptance. And that
mm.
doesn't mean resignation or giving up. It means, like, okay, this has happened. Now what?
Yeah.
Um, and if we continue to fight reality and continue to say, oh, this isn't fair, without getting that help, we're just going to plummet our mood even further. And then my elevator speech or pitch to families and loved ones would be to be genuinely curious. Empathy without curiosity is just projection. And so many people want to project who they think the stroke survivor was or how they should be handling it based on how they themselves would handle it, which makes the stroke survivor feel very lonely.
Mm,
So
mm.
really be curious about what the person is going through, about the changes, and kind of try to partner with them and be on the journey with them. There's no going back. There's only going forward, and
Yeah,
to not give up. So recovery doesn't stop until we do, which is really another important take home.
yeah, yeah. Say it again. Say it again. Recovery doesn't.
Stop until we do.
Yeah, that's a great way to end this show, because that's a good takeaway for people to, like Oprah used to say, you know, what did she say? Like the moment, the verbiage moment, whatever her saying used to be. But that's an important blog, you know, so that people could remember that. So Michael, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kimberly and Jenny. It was really, really, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better show during my stroke month. You know, my stroke happened on April 8th in 1980. 1989, I believe it was. So we're, you know, it's and I suffered from it many, many years ago. So it's really, you know, bring it to the forefront of my life again to remind me of why we need to keep pushing forward, not only to, like Michael said, not only to, you know, prevent strokes, not only for stroke awareness, but to really bring that on, that quiet, unspoken information to everybody about suicides and about mental health is really, really an important piece. So thank you so much. Michael, are you staying for the next show as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Ashley's waiting for us right now. So thank you so much. We always blow our kisses if you feel comfortable. On 3, 1, 2, 3. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Have a stroke of
Thanks so
luck in
much.
your life.